It's November 18th, 2022, and I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. And today we're going to be working on Block 5 of Sewcialites 2. So Sewcialites 2 is a free program from Fat Quarter Shop, and each Friday for the length of the program, we give you a free pattern, and that pattern comes in a 3-inch, 6-inch, and 9-inch size. And today I'm going to be working with a 9-inch size. Today's block is called Empower. It's designed by Carrie Nelson, and you can download on our site all of this information on the program. This right here is our information packet, and then each week you can download your block. So we're on week 5. This is the hardest block of the entire series. It's designed by Carrie Nelson, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the block before we get into it. So this block right here is 3 inches. It is the Nutmeg Collection by Basic Gray, and this one is Tea Tiny, so super hard. This next one uses the Dwell Collection by Camille Ross Kelly, and it's the 6-inch block. And all of these we pressed open. And then the 9-inch block is Cinnamon and Cream Collection by Fig Tree Quilts. And I wanted to talk a little bit about color placement. So this block, it's basically a small basket made 4 times. And if you look at all of our blocks here, we have done different colors on each one. So 1 green, 1 peach, 1 brown, and then another green, but the 2 greens are different greens. And the same thing here, blue, yellow, brown, peach, blue, pink, blue, green. And one thing is, I would say, is pick 4 different fabrics, 4 different colored fabrics, and 4 different prints, and just make sure your background is not busy, because then that way your basket will really show up and show all the detail. Now we are going to be using triangle paper for all of this, and this one you can either use triangle paper or not, but I am going to talk about the technique for it. The biggest tip I have on this block is to make sure you just press, don't stress your fabric, and take your time. This block is going to take a lot of time. The smaller one's going to take the longest. The bigger one's going to take the least amount of time. And this one's kind of like, I don't know, Goldilocks. It's like the perfect size. So here are some color options for you. And I'm going to show you our sample maker blocks also. And this is the one I'm going to be making today, except I'm making it with these fabrics in the 9-inch size. So we have a 3-inch block made with grays by Nova. And that one is really cute. That's probably my favorite one. This is the Blue Jean Collection by Christopher Thompson and Riley Blake, and it is 6 inches. And on this one, you can see all of these go the same way, and then this one goes different. So you can kind of play with your stripes, which we will be doing today, to decide how we want to lay out our stripes. This one is the Emma Collection by Sherry and Chelsea. It's 6 inches, and Riley made this one. So those are our smaller blocks. This is Isabella Collection by Minnick and Simpson. And this is made by Kenna. And then this is the Flower Farm by Bunny Hill Designs. So I'm going to lay all of these out. And I'm going to do that so that you can take a screenshot maybe and look at the color placement and just see how each of them look different. And this one, you can see all the stripes go the same way. This one, they don't. It gives it kind of more movement. They all have a little bit different colors. This one does have 2 lighter colors opposing. So kind of whichever one you think looks the best, you could kind of mirror. And so it's all about color placement on this block and taking your time. So hopefully one of these blocks will inspire you to do that. And then this is, again, called Empower, designed by Carrie Nelson. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the designer before we jump into the block. So this was designed by Carrie Nelson. She's also known as Miss Rosie's Quilt Company. And she said that she's crazy about sawtooth stars. Double wedding rings have always made me crazy, but I may be ready to take one on. I'm excited about my block because all of the separate units that can be pieced together as separate blocks, or they can be used as a connector block. She can't wait to use foundation papers for the square in the square. So here we go. This is the author. Her first book with It's So Emma was the Summer Moon book, and it came out in 2019. So 3 years old, and it's a really, you can see if you look at this block, it's very similar to the Summer Moon book because she really loves patchwork blocks. And she likes really hard things. You see there's a lot of half square triangles in this book. And then our second book with her is with Joanna Figueroa of Fig Tree Quilts and Carrie Nelson. It's called A Scrapbook of Quilts. And on this one, this right here also comes with a template. So if you're interested in making that one, this is the template by Carrie. So this book also is, I would say, intermediate, where this one is more advanced. This one is more collection based, and this one is more scrappy based. So we're going to kind of jump right into the block. And I did want to show you, if you think this block is too difficult, then if you go back to Sewcialites Part 1, which is also free, and you can download the full pattern, if you look at block 29 by me and my sister designs from the first Sewcialites, this would be a similar block, but it would be 1 unit versus 4. So you can always go back and look at that video if you want to try something a little bit easier with the same type of look, because this one is pretty difficult. So let's start block 5. So like I said, I'm going to be replicating this colorway, but I'm going to be doing the 9-inch size. So I've got my fabrics here, and we're going to start by talking through before we cut. So step 1 is making a half square triangle without paper. You could use paper if you wanted to, and you would have an extra. If you want to use paper, you would use H100 for the 3-inch block, H200 for the 6-inch block, and H300 for the 9-inch block. I'm going to do it this way, except make it a little bit bigger, and just to kind of show you how you can trim down. Now, this next one, you definitely are going to use triangle paper. So for the small size, you would make 1/2 inch, so that's H050. For the 6-inch, you would use H100. And then for the 9-inch, you would use H150. So 1/2 inch finished, 1 inch finished, and 2-inch finished. And if you download our free handy dandy half square triangle cheat sheet, if you look, for example, right here, this 1x1 is unfinished. So here's unfinished. And it tells you your finished size is 1/2 inch, so you need H050. So that's how you can download this, keep this in your binder of Sewcialites. It will always help you figure out what triangle paper you need. And unfinished is before it goes in the block, and finished is the number after the block. So if you're looking at your pattern, you would go by unfinished size. And so kind of I've looked at that to know what I need. So I'm going to be using this roll for this paper. Before I start cutting, I'm going to well, these are the new triangles on a roll washi tape dots, and that helps me know which one I am working on. So we're doing 1.5, and you're going to make 24 total, D and B. You need 3 squares from each, 12 total. So 3, 6, 9, 12. That's going to be the easiest way. 3, 6, 9, 12. Actually, this will be the easiest way. So what I'm going to do is cut my paper first. That's going to make it easiest. And again, H150. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this. It's really important on triangle paper to cut exactly on that line. And then put this back on there. And then I need 3 squares each. And I know that because it tells me right here, 3 squares. And we wrote the pattern without paper because we don't want you to have to buy paper if you don't use paper. And that's why we have the guide to show you how to convert to the paper. So I've got my triangle paper cut, and like I've got 3 for D. And they're going to be kind of rolly. I'll just put them on my design board right here. I'll just put this on top, make them a little flat. So we're going to first start by cutting A and C. It says to cut a 3.5 inch square. I'm going to cut 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch bigger just because I want to be able to trim that down. So if you're doing the smaller block, just add 1/2 inch. If you're doing the medium block, do 1/2 inch. And I'm going to cut that all at one time on all 4, not the background. I'm just going to cut the 4 right here. And I'll show you on the stripes. I'm not pre-planning. I will just make it work when I get to the end. So here it says cut 3.5. I'm going to cut a 4-inch square. And I'm going to just do that with this ruler. So I always cut on this little, on a corner. And it doesn't have to be exact because I'm going to trim down. So I'm not cutting exactly just because I'm going to trim down, so you don't have to have exact. And then, so this is my C's. Now I need 4 of the same size from the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this in 4s, just like this. It's going to make it kind of messy, but this makes it easier. And I'm going to cut that off the corner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put right sides together. So this is right sides together, right sides together, right sides together, right sides together. And like I said, this doesn't have to be exact. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut on the line instead of cutting after because that saves me time. Now these right here are going to be saved, and I'm putting them on my 1/2 square triangle board that we have talked about in other videos to be sewed later and saved for another project. So this will go on my board, this will go on my block board, and then this one I can either cut this way or this way. I'm going to just go with this way. I don't think it matters. We'll make it work either way. So I keep one, I save one for another project. And cutting it bigger will be okay because we have given you plenty of fabric requirements to cut bigger. And it makes it where you can sew faster. So I'm saving those for another day, and then I'm also going to save something else from this project for this. So I'm going to put these on my board as A and C. So this is A and C. Right like that. So now I'm going to cut individually each piece with the background at the same time, which is why I cut my paper at the beginning. So it's probably not the best use of the fabric the way I cut it, but this is honestly what I do at home, so I'm just showing you what I do at home. So here I'm going to just take one corner, make sure it's right sides together. And then I'll just put a little pin, and I'll talk through a little bit about tips on working with triangle paper in a little bit, because it is important. So that's one of them. And then I'll pick another corner. I'm gonna go iron this just real quick so that I get that wrinkle out. And I'm going to put my handy dandy white fabric. That's just so I don't stain the ironing station below. And then, okay, I got to figure out, this is the right side, this is the wrong side. Just put it on this corner right here. I'm going to do this so I don't have that crease in there. So make sure your right side's together. Pin. And you can definitely be more systematic about how you cut if you want to save fabric a little bit better than I do. This is just kind of what I've always done. It's just cut from a corner, any corner. Put another corner, right sides together. This fabric is pretty, gotta make sure. It's pretty white, so have to always be careful. And I cut kind of fat because this is the salvage, so I don't want to have that salvage in my thing. Pin that together. And then do one more corner. I'm going to cut this straight just so I have a straight line. So that's right sides together. Put your last little strip on there. And that is the cutting for the entire block. And I did cut all of my background into, when I start these blocks, into half-yard cuts, just so that I have a manageable amount to work from, and these are fat quarters. So now I'm going to talk about what you'll do at the sewing machine, because I do like to group everything into saving time at the sewing machine. So these are my B's and D's, and this is my A's and C's. What I'm going to do is take a 1/4 inch foot, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on all 4 of these. That is going to give me step 1, and we'll subcut later or trim down later. This one, I'm going to change the foot, and I'm going to use an open toe foot, and I'm going to stitch directly on that line. I'm going to use a size 90 needle so that it's nice and sharp and punctures the paper really nice and sharp. It's very important that you keep everything flat and there's no wrinkles in it. So keeping it flat as you sew and stitch directly on that line. If you stitch too far over, your half square triangle will be too short. If you stitch too far this way, your half square triangle will be fat. So my goal is to sew all of this at one time. And I already have my 1/4 inch foot on the machine, so I'm going to do these first. I'm going to cut these apart, put them back on my design board, change my foot, and if you're working with triangle paper, it's really nice to have a bed on your machine. Sometimes they come with them, sometimes they don't, but I have this so it's nice and flat. And like I said, just keep it nice and flat. I do start stitching slightly outside of the paper, so all of my little strings will be off of the paper when I cut. Just keep it nice and flat and stitch directly on the line. And I am going to use a tiny stitch here. I was doing a 1.5 for this. I'm going to do a 1.0 for this one. And you can start and stop and rotate. I never do that. I just kind of always start over. So right there you can rotate and have your needle down. And then here, just make sure it's flat. And then you'll see that's how the back looks, that's how the front looks. You're going to do that 4 times. And like I said, this block is pretty intense. And then after I do that first one, flatten it. Move to the next one. So that's my third one, and I've got one more. And you'll see that this saves time doing the triangle paper in the end. So now I'm going to go back to the cutting table. and I'm going to trim all of these. So what I like to do is trim the outside first. I have this little bucket I'm going to put everything in. And just trim as carefully as you can. So I'm going to do all 4 like that first, just to make it easy. So and you guys can comment in the comment box and let me know if you like triangle paper or if you don't, and it's okay either way. I love triangle paper. I don't know what I would do without it. I'd probably give up quilting. I love it so much. I love the accuracy of it, and I love that it just comes out really nice and pretty. And you definitely want to take your time doing this because you don't want your stuff to come out weird or off shaped. And once you get the rhythm of using triangle paper, just like anything else, you will get it down and it will be amazing. Okay. So there's most of my time in creating the triangle paper. So you could time yourself at home and see if when you make your triangles, if you do it the traditional way, if it's faster or if this is faster. Now from here, I'm going to just cut each one individually. And you're cutting on the solid lines. And then here, this one doesn't have to be as accurate, so that doesn't have to be. And just do that on all of them, and you don't even have to keep them together. We just have to cut a few more, and then we're going to pull the paper off. And at home, I actually don't have to pull the paper off because I have a son that likes to do it. Well, I think at one time he liked to do it. Now I think he's tired of it. So whichever brand you do, it's all the same in terms, it's not the same in terms of accuracy, but it is the same in terms of pulling the paper. So I like to fold the paper back and then pull one side and then the next side. So what you can do is you could just fold all these back at one time to save time. I do whatever I can to save time but still be accurate. So, and this is how I taught my son to do it. Another thing you can do is if you put your iron on top of the paper without steam, it'll make the paper pull off easier. I tend to not do that. I tend to just do this only. So. And this is going to make one extra, and that one extra will go on our little board that we're going to do something with later on another year, another day. So I have all that done. Now I'm going to just pull the paper. And the shorter your stitch length, the easier. Oops. This does happen at home. I just dropped one in here. Where'd it go? I dropped one in here, I think. Yeah, I did. Yeah, here. I don't know where it is. Okay, we're going to try to find it. I don't know. I think I dropped it in there. I think I dropped one in there. Oh my goodness. So let's see. Some people like to put their dark on the top so that they can see the paper easier pulling off. To me, it does not matter if you put the dark or the light. It doesn't. I don't think I did drop one in there. Okay. Well, we'll see at the end if I find it or not. But I do that all the time at home, and actually sometimes I have to have my kids dig through the trash. I'm like, where is the triangle? And you want to get all the paper off. You don't want to leave any of the paper on. And you can time that, but now we have made 24 half square triangles in however long that was. So probably 30 minutes, maybe 25, maybe 20. And all we're gonna do now is iron. So I'm gonna just put this on my board, take my board, and we're gonna iron all of these open. So I'm gonna set my seam, press to one side, doesn't matter which side. And I do think this block is almost impossible to do if you do not press open. I'm gonna let that clapper pull in the heat and make that a little bit cooler. And like I said, at this point, I'm not keeping my colors together or anything. I'm just ironing in the order they come out. And these are all on the bias. So this is the bias right here. So now that you've used paper, you don't have to worry about the bias because you've sewn on the bias and you didn't have ability to stretch because you were using paper. And here I'll put another clapper. Throw this one under there and just keep ironing. And I did starch before I started, so everything is starched. So using the steam will not shrink my fabric because it's already been starched and shrunk. And it does help when making half square triangles if you have starched because there will be less stretch. So now I have them all pressed one direction, and I'll go backwards, and this one, I'm not even going to cut the edges off. I'm just going to press open. And I'll show you what we do with that. I'm not going to cut them because I'm going to be trimming down. And since I'm going to trim down, I don't need to trim those ahead of time. So I'm just going to... And once I press open, press on the other side too. And then put that on there. And what that does, that wood will take the heat out and make them lie flatter. And if you put a quilt block under one of those and come back the next morning, you will definitely see the difference. And then just keep... Oh, these I do need to cut. So this one I actually do need to cut these. So I'm going to cut in my little bucket, and you want to cut to where, like for example, that you don't want to cut that because you've got a little piece there. It's going to get in the way of your seam, so you've got to cut all the way. And you'll see in a little bit why. So this one you cut because it's already true to size because we use triangle paper. The other one I'm going to be trimming down, And because I'm trimming down, I don't need to cut those because they're going to get trimmed down with the ruler. So I didn't want to do that extra step. So, and cutting these before you press open saves time, because if you press open, I'll show you. If you press open before you do that, you will have to cut 4 times instead of 2. And like I said, you want to make sure you don't cut outside of it because then you'll have bulk. So, put that one under here. And then do the same thing with these. And I hope that my kids eventually will get old enough to where I can trust them to cut these off, because then that'll save more time. I always kind of imagine that, like, eventually one day there'll be some kind of machine that can just make my half square triangles. I feel like I always think about how could I develop a machine that would do this, but I don't think that would really work. And using really sharp scissors is important on this. If you have dull scissors, it's going to make it, like, you'll know, it'll just be kind of a pain. So now I am going to press all of these open. And like I said, press one side and press a couple on top of each other. 2. And then I'm going to turn them over and just get them flat. Put a clapper. So maybe 4 at a time. And you don't have to use the clapper. I started using this a couple years ago and I love it. Some people have had their husbands make them, which is really cool. We sell these, but you can also get some on Etsy that have like your name. You can pick a size. So they're really fun. You can really kind of jazz up your studio with one. And you just keep ironing. So this one, it's really not hard. It just takes a lot of time and patience, I would say. And then sometimes I'll count. Sometimes I'll listen to true crime. Whatever. So just keep pressing. And when I iron, I try not to rock my iron too much because I don't want it to stretch my fabric. Oh, I didn't iron the front. And you want to make sure it's really flat. You want to make sure on the front it's flat, because if it's not, it's going to keep a crease in the front of your quilt. So I think that's pretty important. Now, if I was at home, I would let these sit. I'd probably move and cut to something else and let these really sit under the clapper for a long time to get nice and flat. Since we're doing a demo, I'm not going to do that, but at home, that is what I definitely would do. When I take the clapper off, I like it to be cold. So from here, we're going to do step 1, and it says to trim 3.5 by 3.5. So handy dandy ruler, that's already 3.5. And what I'll do is put the diagonal line on the Creative Grids ruler. And oh, I did this a little bit different because I cut on the center of the line instead of a 1/4 inch away. So luckily I cut it bigger. So yeah, definitely I should have cut a 1/4 inch away, but I cut it bigger and guess what? It still works. So that's kind of a faux pas on my part. But now it's 3.5. Perfect for my block. So yeah, you were supposed to cut a 1/4 inch away, but it's fine, it works. And same thing here. Three and a half. And then you'll just keep going. And this mat turns, but I just prefer to lift it. It actually turns really nice, but with paper on here, I don't have to worry about it. And if you can't get it to trim to 3.5, just I guess you'd start over, and that wouldn't be the first time that I would have to start something over. So I have 4 of these. And then the other half of these we put on a board, and you'll see in another video what I do with those. So those are done. And then magically, the rest are done. And they're done because we just did triangle paper. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out this step. Now right here I have 3" and 6" covered because if I don't, I'll cut wrong. So that's so that I don't make a mistake. So I'm going to lay out this. So I'm going to start with I'm going to kind of lay it out into 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm sure when I lay these out at first, there's going to be a mistake. There always is. So the first thing I'm trying to do is just lay it out, and then I'll fix the mistakes later. Now you're going to have 1 extra half square triangle from each color. This is going to go on that board that you have that saves your triangle papers. So that'll go here, just on that board. And we'll do that with all of them. And then let's see, I'll do pink over here. And then I'll save this one. So here it's just, this is when a design board is really important because your fabric won't move. Now, first I'm going to check these before I go on. It does look right. And that looks right. Okay, this, we've got a stripe. I'm going to lay it out like normal, any which way. So you can sew it just like that, or you can make them all go the same way. So to do that, this goes the same way, but this one doesn't. So I'll just kind of rotate, and look, it goes the same way. This one goes the same way now. So you kind of have to play with it. This one goes the same way, and then from here you have to find one that goes the same way, and then that looks correct, and then I'll save this one. So let me see if I've got it right. The bottom one is not. Oh, it's not the right way. There we go. So there you go. So let's see, stripe, 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 stripe. And having that extra one really helps. Now, if you use triangle paper that does the 3 designs, like we had, and it goes different directions, it will be fine. Let me see a triangles on a roll real quick. Thanks. So if you use paper that goes different directions like this, everything's going to come out fine. If your triangle paper only goes one way, or one way, this will not work. So that's why I use triangles on a roll. Okay, I'm checking again just to make sure I've got everything looking good. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew this seam with a 1/4 inch, put it on the board. Sew this with a 1/4 inch, put it on the board, and so on and so forth. From there, I'm gonna go straight to the ironing table, press, put it back on the board, and just keep building my block. But I am going to keep this with it so that I keep everything the right direction. So I'm gonna be going from the sewing table to the ironing table. And so here I'm going to switch to 1/4 inch foot. And I'm going to, well, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to put these together, and I am going to pin each time and put it back on the board where it goes. That'll save me time later. And I'm going to switch my stitch to 1.5 and just put it right where I got it on the board. And pinning will really help everything stay accurate. And I think once you use a design board, you'll never not use one. And they're easy to make. We have a video on how to make them that Lori Holt came up with. So if you don't want to spend the money to buy them, you can make them. Now right here, these two, something is off. I'm going to go back to the cutting table and trim these down. One of these is missized. I'm not sure which one, so I'm going to try to get them back. So I must have done something wrong because they didn't come out the right size. Because when I put them next to each other, so this one's right and that one was a little fat. So now I'm going to sew these. Okay. And it's better to fix it before you go on. So now what I will do is set the seam, press to one side, press open. Now I'm going to put that on the board. It might or might not be the right direction. I'll worry about that later, but I am going to put the clapper on it. But at least I'll know it's in the right spot on the table, on the board. And this one, because I'm doing it this way, You might burn your fingers because when I press open, it's hot. I just would rather keep it all the same direction. And I think there's tools you can use to press open. I just haven't used them before. So if you guys have one to recommend, you can definitely put it in the comment box. So what I'm going to do now is kind of, see, it's hot. The paper just, this is so hot that it made the paper curl. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just get everything lined back up the way it should be. And just double check to make sure everything's going the right way. This one's not. Wait, this one's not. Okay, let's see. So white, 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 dark, 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 dark. Okay, it looks correct. So now before I go to my sewing machine, what I'm going to do is put these together, pin at the bottom, and then here I'm going to make sure the pink and the pink touch and the white touch and pin. Put it on my board. Do the same thing here. This bottom part, match that up. And so I'm creating everything before I go back to my sewing table, and then I can just sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And that'll be like one unit, and then this will be the next unit. And the way I sew, I'll cut my thread in between each unit and then not separate the units, and then that way it makes it easier on the next couple of steps. And so you can see this block, it is hard, but it is doable. But don't be afraid to do the other block if you're interested to do something easier. Or you can always, what a lot of you do in the Facebook group Sewcialites, what I want to say a lot, but I have seen it done, is you'll make one block kind of like a trial run, and then figure out, you know, maybe you could have done, you know, a different thing, or maybe you didn't like the technique, or maybe you came up with something different. You can go in and remake the block. You can always remake. So just pin, pin, pin. If you didn't pin, I wouldn't want to see what happened, because that would be... And I am pinning on this one kind of in the middle. And one thing you'll notice is I chain all the way down. I don't, some people will chain with this up just so you can get your needle to go right in there. I never do that because I didn't even know that was really a thing. But I don't do that. I never have. I kind of just feel like if I'm accurate, I shouldn't have to worry about it. And if I sew it wrong, I'll just, I'll seam rip it and fix it. But whatever you do is fine. Okay, right here. If you look right there, look at that. It didn't iron all the way flat, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to press that flat, and then I'm going to go and make sure it's 3.5. And it's just because I had to press it a little, it needed a little bit of trimming. And we're like, maybe halfway done. So this block, it's a lot, but it's, if you take it step by step. One thing you could do, what would be great, is do one unit and see what you think. And then if you can attempt one unit, then do the other 3. So like I said, I'm going to sew with the pink. Keep it chained together, don't cut my thread. And then I've got a unit that's still together. And you can see that my points hopefully match. So they match, match, match. Put that back on my board and just do the same thing on all. Same thing. Look to make sure they match. Put it on the board. Oh, thank goodness. Oh, goodness. Good, good, good. Okay. Now I'm going to set each seam. Press to one side. Either side, it doesn't matter which. Then press open. It's going to be hot. And right here, you got to really press to make sure that seam goes down. So I'm going to set it 4 seconds. Turn it over. Press on the top. It goes right there. Same thing on all of them. Now I'm going to show you what not to do. Don't get it and just start like going crazy with your iron. If you start wiggling your iron, your fabric is going to be wiggly. So just try to be gentle and I guess firm. And always remember, I'm just showing you what I do in my sewing room. Feel free to make the block however you want. And then I'll put the clapper like that. Okay. So same thing here, put the clapper. And then I'm going to pin. And so here, at this point, I will cut this apart because if you don't, when you press open in a little bit, it will not allow it to press open. So cut, make sure it's all still going the same direction. And you need to pin here so that this meets, here, and here, so that it all meets and lines up. So you can pin however you want, but what I'm going to do is just make sure that I've got it lined up, hold it in place, and I find pinning straight up and down gives me the best result. Some people pin sideways or slanted, and you can do whichever one works best for you. So I've pinned in those two, and then I'm going to do the third. Right there. And then pin and pin one more time. And when you pin, it should be nice and flat. It shouldn't be too bubbly. If it's all bubbly all over the place, then when you did your half square triangles, you weren't, they weren't sized correctly. So pin here. So just slow and steady, and I would love for you guys, we'll do a poll and see what size of this you're making. Are you making 3-inch, 6-inch, or 9-inch? Or are you making the block from Sewcialites 1? And we'll see who wins that poll. And remember, all the fabric requirements and everything you need for this sew along are available for free on fatquartershop.com. And let's see. Get that. And anytime if you see anything that's out of line, you know, you can fix it or trim it before you keep going. But I'm having pretty good luck today. So now right here, right there, that looks a little, let's see, there we go. So that's a little puffy right there. But I'm gonna show you when I get to that one how you make it work. So I'll do that one first. Hopefully it works. And I like to use the little house pins. They are really hard for us to get, and they're pretty expensive, but those are my favorite because they're thin. The thicker your pin is when you put it in, if it's super thick, it might distort your fabric or move it. So I prefer, doesn't matter which brand. I used to like a Clover brand, but or Dritz, and they discontinued it. So now I'm using Little House. But the thinner, the better. So from here, you're gonna see this is flat and this is a little bumpy. So I'm gonna show you what to do. First, start stitching. Once you get in a little bit, put your finger and pull. And it might fix, it might not. And it did. And right there, I'm a little tiny bit off, but I'm gonna leave it. Well, I could come in a tiny bit more right there. And then the rest of mine came out pretty flat, so I won't have to pull. I take my pin out right before I go over it. Hopefully this last one works. Yay! So from here, set your seam, press to one side, and let your clapper sit on it a little bit. It doesn't matter which side you press toward because we're going to press that open. When you have a block that has a lot of seams like this, it's easier to press open. Just make sure whatever normal stitch length you use, you go down just a tiny bit. Okay, so now I'm going to press this open, and I do that with my fingers and then the iron so that it's nice and flat. Oops. Okay, you definitely don't want that. So and just keep going. Almost done. We only have 2 more seams left. And then this one, you can see it's a tiny bit, like it's not as perfect as these others. See, it's a little bit wavy, but it'll be okay. And right there, I didn't clip that little piece. So I need to clip that thread so that it'll lay flat. Okay. So now I'm going to lay this out. So I think it's blue, pink, green stripe. Okay, so it looks correct, but I wanted to show you a couple things before we go on. This block can be done like this. And that gives you a beautiful star. So I love the look of that. You could also do this, where it's kind of like half a star, half a star. But I'm going to go ahead and sew it the way that Carrie designed it. And I'm going to check again to make sure I've got everything in the right spot. And that's kind of how I do it. And what I'm going to do, I do think it would look really pretty the other way though. Now right here, I can tell this is a tiny bit off. So before I sew this to this, I'm going to do a little trimming. And what I'm going to do is put a line on my ruler with this seam. And I'm going to just trim this little tiny part off because I could tell it's off. Then my next step will be more accurate. Okay, so I'm going to put right sides together. And I'm going to pin like I've been doing the whole time. This time, this seam are all that really need to line up. So I'm going to do poke a pin. What you do is you put your pin in the center of your seam, and it should be right in the center. Put it in the other seam. Let your pin lie flat. And pin. I'm going to pin once here. It doesn't have to line up with anything though. And then pin one at the top. Do the same thing on this one. So again, right in that center, right in the center, pin. And then what I'm going to do is sew with a 1/4 inch seam all the way down, not cutting my thread so that when I come back, the block is already laid out for me. Don't cut your thread. Okay, now here's the real test to see if it lines up. And this one's perfect. And this one, it's pretty close. I'm gonna leave it. I could go in about a 32nd of an inch. Hold on, let's see. And now it's perfect. So here, set your seam. Now, if you just start ironing right here, it's not going to be as nice if you don't set your seam. Now, when you're pressing open here, you want to try not to get your other seams distorted. And to not distort them, the easiest thing is to finger press open first. Then from here, press on the front. Everything's nice and flat. Check one more time, everything's still in the right spot. Nothing jumped, nothing moved. Right sides together. Clip the little string or the little thread and then pin. Same thing. Looking at every intersection. So this block is doable. If I can do this on camera, then I think you guys at home can definitely do it. Just take it slow. And just make sure you pin. And then I'm going to take another poll, and my poll is going to be, are you going to assemble your units the way that Carrie Nelson of Miss Rosie designed, or are you going to turn it into a star like I just showed you? I love the star. And that's what's great about a sew along or anything you do. Make the quilt your own. It doesn't have to be exactly the way it's written. You can have creative freedom in your quilting. So lots of pins. And then here I'm just going to sew down the seam. And again, like right here, I'm not going to pull my pin out yet because I feel like if I do, it might move. So I'm going to just keep it going. Right before I sew over it, take it out. Okay. And everything lines up. Yay! So from here, now set your seam, press to one side, press open. But what I would definitely do here is leave several clappers on it for like 15 minutes. I would move on to your next block or whatever your next project is you're doing. Definitely use a clapper at this point. And the way I would use the clappers is if you don't have a square one, just do that. And I would let it sit there for at least 15 minutes and your block is going to look so nice and flat. But what I'm going to do now is trim. Well, I'm going to kind of trim the threads off. And you could trim the threads off and then later I will, after I do this, after the video, what I'll do is iron it and then let the clapper sit on it after. So the first thing I'm going to do is right here. It looks a little bubbly. I'm gonna go iron that again so it's flatter. Okay, and then I'm going to put my Creative Grids ruler, whatever size you like to use. You should use, on this quilt, I like to use my square rulers and my skinnier, and you know, skinnier on both sides. And when I'm trimming, I've got my line here, the dotted line here, and here, trim. And then just do every side. Now, some people do this and some people don't. It's totally optional. But same thing here. Line, point, point. And really, you should just have a tiny bit come off. I just don't like those strings to be on there. But this is totally optional. Same thing. Line, 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 line. Or intersection. And that should come off nice and clean. Now right here, it kind of curves in a little bit. Trim that a little bit. And then at the end, I'm going to show you all the blocks together. I'm going to show you my block and the others this size. And you will see they all come out slightly different. So different makers will come out different sizes. I'm going to measure mine and see what it comes out to. I'm going to do it where you guys can see. So it's exactly 9.5 inches. Somehow I got that exactly right there. It's a little bit much. It's that pink that's off. So mine came out somehow exactly 9.5 inches. So hopefully you have some success with this block. Again, this is block number 5. It's called Empower by Carrie Nelson of Miss Rosie's Quilt Company, and we're going to have a giveaway today. So drop a comment after the video is over, and we have shown 5 Sewcialite blocks so far. Which block has been your favorite? And I also want you to comment and let me know, have you been able to keep up with the sew along? Because I hope you have, and I will see you next Friday. Thanks for watching.